It is super early. You're not going to be able to see me, but we are... Are you going to be able to see me? Yeah, it's pretty early. You're not going to really be able to see me, but we are here. Time to get ready to race. I don't know how this is going to go.
Throughout, you can pretty much always kind of see one, and this is essentially the main loop of the park. And there's lots of little branch roads to the side where the camping is, but you say on the main,
yeah,
you come out, and when you come out of that loop, there's 9. Okay, it's close enough. I'll be in the campground. Listen for me. That'll be your cue to listen for the bell.
When it rings.
I can ring the bell from the start, but I got to get out ahead of them. Well, so when you come back, hopefully we'll have the clock working. So just add 1 hour to your time. Or as I said before, I'll claim a personal best. So I'll just, as soon as it hits 2, we'll go.
yeah.
It's like watching the kettle boil. Right, go. All right, have a good run, folks.
Thank you.
Okay, so 4 different pairs of shoes. This is an example of how prepared I was for the Not the Honolulu half marathon, or it was an example of just how unprepared I was for the Not the Honolulu half marathon. All right, so welcome to talk about why I have so many shoes in front of me. If I'm talking about why is this not in focus? Okay, so to talk about why I have so many shoes in front of me when I'm talking about a half marathon race, it first makes sense to talk about what this race actually was. Now this was the Not the Honolulu half marathon. It's a local race in my area. I live up in Eastern Canada, which means in December there's all kinds of potential for snow and ice, and they always line this up around when the Honolulu marathon is. We're not in Honolulu, we're in Eastern Canada, and we're running this race through a campground. So I had come up with a plan. Now I'm not saying that it was a good plan, but it was a plan. That what I was going to do was on the day I was going to take all 4 pairs of shoes, not knowing what the race was like, whether I was on trails or roads and what the conditions were going to be like. And I was going to look at the feet of the first couple of people that I knew had run this race before and just make a decision on what to put on my feet from there. And when they came into the room, one of them was wearing, I think it was a Peregrine 12, so a fairly aggressive trail shoe. And another one was wearing something kind of like the Saucony Endorphin Speed 2. So that was no help whatsoever. But the 4 shoes I did bring were the Brooks Ghost 15. Just a daily trainer and not a very fast shoe, but lots of rubber on the outsole here. So if conditions weren't 100% and I was going to be running on a little bit of trail, definitely could have ran in that, did not. Secondly, we have the Salomon Pulsar trail. This is going to be if conditions got a little bit worse, if we had some snow and ice. And if you saw in the opening clips of this, not a lot of snow and ice. Right now, actually, as I'm filming this a week later, we are getting a little bit of snow today, but trail shoe, didn't end up using that either. Then we have the Triumph 20 that I also took with me if I just got there and decided, you know what, it's just an easy, comfortable race that I want to do today. Just a fun race because it was meant to be a little bit of fun or a lot of fun. All races are meant to be fun. But I ended up not using the Triumph 20 either. What I went with was my usual race day shoe, and that is the Saucony Endorphin Speed 2. It's let me through a good, solid half marathon and marathon earlier in the year. So I went with this. Turned out to be a really good choice because, spoiler alert, I actually PB'd this race. Okay, so enough about that. Let's talk about how the day actually went. Now, this started off like any other race day or any other long run day. Nothing new on race day, so I try to keep it pretty consistent. Started off waking up just a couple hours before I knew I had to be out there racing and had my normal breakfast, just a bagel, peanut butter, sliced up banana, mixed up some Gatorade, and coffee. Always having the coffee. All right, so not the Honolulu half marathon. We've eaten our breakfast, gotten off to the race. just briefly going to talk about the race for a couple of minutes, and then I'm going to give you a couple of takeaways I have from that entire day that I'm going to carry forward with me into 2023. Now the race, if I jump on over to Strava, Strava says that I did 21.22 kilometers. In the elapsed time, the total time was 1 hour, 47 minutes and 9 seconds. My average pace was 5:03 per kilometer, and there was a little bit of elevation gain here of 213 meters. Now, that's an important thing to bring up here because I'm not used to racing in any sorts of hills. Any of the races that I've done so far have been on flats, so this was something a little bit different. And actually the day before this race, and this is one of the takeaways I have, I was talking to somebody and they're really not a runner, and they were asking me about how I was going to negotiate some of the hills that they knew were up in the Mactaquac Provincial Park. And I said, you know what? A lot of the more experienced runners probably try to run these a little bit more on relative effort, and they might back off a little bit going up the hill and then speed up on the flats and the downhill, just not to burn themselves out. And when I was running this race, I've been following somebody for quite a while, and what did I do when we hit the hill? That's when I actually made my move. That's when I passed them. It's the hills that are getting me. Oh, almost halfway there. Hey, let's go. And I was thinking about it the whole time that I was passing them, thinking, this is exactly what I said you shouldn't do. You should try to keep a relative effort and not really push going up those hills. But I did it anyway, and it turned out really, really well. So I think moving forward, I'm going to be a little bit less scared or a little bit less worried about entering races that do have some hills. So that's a pretty solid takeaway from the race. And another one of the takeaways I have is, yes, this was a PB. Now, the only other half marathon that I've actually run, I ran a few months ago, and I only PB'd this by about 40 seconds. I'll have to look that up, and maybe I'll put that on the screen here, but it was a PB this past weekend. That other race, I had actually been training a little bit more specifically to endurance running than I was for this race. If you've been following my channel, by the way, if you haven't been following my channel, please consider subscribing. I think there's a lot of folks out there that can relate to what I'm going through and the type of content that I put out. I'm just trying to use running as to be sort of the best version of myself for the most important thing in my life, which is my family. You'll hear me say that in pretty much every one of my videos. But if you have been following my channel, some of the videos I put out of late, I've been doing more of a hybrid athlete thing put on by Nick Bear. It's a program where you do quite a bit of weightlifting, but you still do quite a bit of running. But I hadn't done really specific training towards any sort of an endurance race, half marathon or marathon. So I was a little bit worried about how that was going to work out, but it turns out that half marathon feels like a distance that if I keep myself in relatively good shape, I can show up on the day and run it relatively kind of comfortably. Not really comfortable, but kind of comfortably. And I proved it to myself in getting an actual PR in this race, even though I hadn't been training specifically for it. That's takeaway number 2. And the third and last takeaway I have from this whole race is to not be scared about entering more races going into the 2023 season. Now, I pushed myself quite hard during this half marathon, but after the half marathon, I had a packed day. We actually went, celebrated, my daughter did a Santa Shuffle 5K run that morning. After that, my son went and we had some skating practice. Then later on in the evening, we actually went to a local hockey game, and I felt fine. I didn't feel really burnt out. I could tell that I had ran a pretty hard race, but I didn't feel burnt out. And even within just a couple of days after that, I felt more than comfortable heading back to the gym and pushing forward with my training. So third takeaway is just to not be so scared about entering more races and not just focusing on those big goal races. That's it, guys. That's all I have to say about the Not the Honolulu Half Marathon. I had so much fun. Definitely going to be doing this event again next year. My name is Matt. This is What Matters to Matt, and ultimately what matters to me most is my family. I'll see you guys in the next video.
Step 1, wake up early, gonna rise with the sun. Step 2, get some food in you. Step 3, think real hard about what you want to be. Step 4, everybody just do your thing.
Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up.